so excited to share this recipe because not only is it delicious, it's so simple. I want to be able to share yeast breads with everyone, even the people who think that they can't bake, and especially the people who think they can't bake with yeast. Oh my gosh, it's so simple, and you'll have the most delicious treat in no time. Hi, I'm Gesine Prado. I am a pastry chef, a baking instructor, and I wanted to welcome you to my baking school sugar glider kitchen. Today I'm going to make my favorite simple white bread using Platinum Yeast from Red Star. It is so simple, it only uses 5 ingredients. I'm going to be using bread flour, sugar, salt, a little water, olive oil, and Platinum Yeast from Red Star. Easy! Now the reason I love this recipe so much is not only is it easy, it is so tasty and incredibly versatile. And if you are a beginning yeast baker, this is the recipe for you. Now the first thing I'm going to do is add the liquid ingredients to my bowl. And did I mention it's simple? It's so simple, we're going to do this all by hand. No mixer needed. So water first. This is a scant 2 cups. I prefer that you weigh it out, so 454 grams, but if you don't have a scale, that's okay. Just look for the 2 and then go just a little bit underneath there, and then you're good. Add that to your bowl. And then to that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can also use a flavored oil like a walnut oil, or if you prefer, you can use softened butter. You would add it in at the same time. So not room temperature, a little softer, so because you're going to be kneading this by hand, you want it to incorporate really easily. So make sure it's soft. And that's 2 tablespoons. And this makes it extensible, which means it's easier to knead and to roll out. It gives it a lovely texture, and it's olive oil. It's just tasty. And then on top of that, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of fine sea salt. I use sea salt when I bake because it distributes really beautifully. It's not as salty as, say, table salt, and it doesn't have that metallic taste either. And then I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar, and this will help with browning. It'll help with flavor, but it doesn't make it sweet. We can use this dough for both sweet and savory applications. So that's just a part of the flavor, not just giving it sweetness. So on top of this, I'm going to add the flour along with the instant yeast. Now this is Platinum Yeast from Red Star, and it distributes beautifully in the flour, and the really fun thing is that you don't have to do anything other than add it to the dry ingredients. That's all you do. Nothing special. And you can be assured that it works every time. The other thing I love about it, especially if you're a beginning baker, is that say you're kind of confused about rising times and proofing, and you think maybe you overproofed it. This has stability built in so that if you're a little scared of the whole yeast action thing, it's holding your hand the whole time, making sure that even if you're nervous and you're not sure if you've gone too long, it'll be there protecting your dough, and it'll rise and bake perfectly. So I like to distribute all this together in the flour first, and this is a handy dandy dough whisk. And I'm going to add this all into my wet ingredients, all in. You can use a wooden spoon for this as well, but when you start, you're just going to make a really rough dough in the bowl, and then we're going to get our hands dirty. So just be prepared to play a little, but do the best that you can in incorporating everything together in the beginning. Now I'm using bread flour, which has more gluten. Can you use all-purpose flour? You can, you would have to use more, and it wouldn't have the structure that you need. Because this is such a soft dough, you kind of need that extra structure that bread flour brings for this dough. So if you only have all-purpose and you want to make this right away, can you? Yes. Just use about a ½ cup more flour and then have some more on hand, and you're going to get the feel of it. If it's too sticky, add more flour. So now we're going to get really dirty. Get your hands in there. And I fold it over a few times. And the purpose here is just to incorporate any of those dry flour bits that are hanging out on the bottom of the bowl, which they tend to do. They're hiding. So now, this looks terrible. It doesn't look like a perfect dough, but it's ready for hand kneading. And as long as you don't see any really big clumps of flour, we're ready to go and start kneading on the table. You can also make this in a mixer, but I think it's really fun to feel how the dough changes as you're kneading it by hand. So on the side, I have some bench flour, and this is just all-purpose flour. And what I like to do is to do a little ring around the dough to draw in the flour as I knead it. And I'm gonna put a little here and a little on my hands. And if you find, like right now, I've got little clumps of dough on my fingers. If you find that it gets a little too clumpy, don't wash your hands. What you're gonna do is you're gonna put some flour, extra flour on your hands. You're gonna grab your dirty bowl, and then you're going to do a dry flour wash so that you don't clog up your sink. So get your hands nice and clean with the flour wash. A little flour on top, and then we're gonna start kneading. So what I start doing is pressing it into about 8 by 11, which is like a piece of paper. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold over the dough, and then you're gonna use your palms and you're going to rock it a little to seal it. And then you're gonna turn it over again. And the reason you're turning it is that you want to develop this dough in every direction. And if you feel at any point that it's sticking, you draw in more flour and you bring it back in. Now this takes about 10 minutes. Now if you have a step tracker, put it on because you will get steps as you're rocking and rolling. And it is exercise. So you continue kneading and you'll feel it getting tighter and tighter. That means it's developing. It's doing exactly what you want it to do. And this feels so good. It's a little hypnotizing. So maybe put on a timer. Otherwise, an hour later, you'll still be doing this. And you'll feel the dough getting tighter and tighter. It won't stretch as much as it has been. And then in about 10, 12 minutes, you'll be ready to let your dough rest. I have been kneading about 10 minutes. So I'm going to check to see if I've kneaded it enough. So what I do is I put my dough into a nice taut little ball. And what I'm doing is I'm drawing my fingers underneath to make it a little tighter. If it's shiny and smooth and stays there, you know that you've kneaded enough. But there's another way of telling. Poke your dough. And if it springs back, you're good. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is put it into an oiled bowl and allow it to rest for about an hour to prove, and it'll double in size. But when it's just sitting in a bowl, sometimes it's hard to tell what is double. So I have a trick. I have a straight edge shot glass that I put a little mark on, and I will take some of the dough and I will put it in there up to that mark. And I will cover that as well along with the rest of my dough. Now, once that has doubled, you'll be able to tell because you have a mark right there. But you cover that too. And then I have a bowl that's sprayed with nonstick cooking spray as well. And then I coat all of the dough. Safety spray on top. Then I cover the bowl with plastic wrap or disposable wrap, kind of like a shower cap. That works perfectly. Put this in a warm place, about 75 degrees. The perfect place is an oven with just the light on. It should take about an hour. A great indicator is if this has risen double above the mark. I'll see you in an hour. The dough has risen. It's gorgeous. And now it's time to shape it into loaves. This makes 2 loaves. And I have 2 8.5 by 4.5 pans that I'm going to spray with nonstick spray. And now our baby. Let's put some flour down so it doesn't stick. Look at this gorgeous stuff. Oh. So nice. I'm going to divide this into, but first I make it into a rough rectangle to make that easier. Use a bench knife to do this. And now for each piece, I'm going to fold it over towards the middle. And I'm going to pinch that seam. And before I do anything else, I'm going to make sure that it's not sticking. And you can tell this dough is it just wants to flow. It's so supple, it's so tender, and it's telling you right now how good it's going to be once it's baked and in your mouth. Now we're ready to shape it into a loaf. So I start at the top, and I'm going to put my fingers underneath and my thumbs right here, and I'm going to turn it around like this. And I'm going to use my thumbs to gently rock and press. So turn, rock, and press. And as I'm doing it, I'm kind of making it a little longer as I go. But this makes it a really nice, even loaf. And if you have to, on the sides, if you feel it sticking, just go like this to make sure that you're not pulling and tearing the dough because your hands are making it stick. You want it to be nice and smooth. And you have a little loaf ready to go into your bread pan. Now I spray it just a little on top with nonstick spray and cover with its shower cap or with plastic wrap. Now, I love the shower cap because it gives it a lot of room to grow, and that if it does end up growing and touching the plastic, it won't stick to it. But you can also just use plastic wrap. Just make sure what we're looking for in about an hour, you want to see the dough doming over the pan. And now we've got number 2. The breads have risen. They're gorgeous. And one thing you have to look for is that they have crested just above the tin. The second way you can tell whether it's ready to bake is to give it a little jiggle. If it's jiggly, it's ready. And the third way to tell if it's ready for the oven is to give it a little poke. So I put a little flour on my finger and then, boop, give it a poke. If you still see that indentation, which we do, it's ready for the oven. 350 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes. You're looking for a nice golden brown. And when it comes out of the oven, give it a little bit of slathering of butter on top, and then you let it cool completely before you get to eat some delicious bread. Into the oven. The bread is still warm from the oven, and while it's warm, I'll give it a little rub of butter. But this recipe isn't just loaves of bread. It gives me the opportunity to make so many gorgeous platinum moments. For instance, you can make a family-sized woven bread. Or how about a savory pesto twist bread? And everyone loves cinnamon sugar knots. Now, why don't you go take this recipe and make your very own platinum moments? You can find this recipe at redstaryeast.com/platinum.